Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. We're very pleased today to be together to regard the main estimates for the Department of Public Works and Government Services, and we'll also be looking at the report on plans and priorities of Shared Services Canada. But we're very pleased to have with us today the Honourable Diane Finley, the Minister for Public Works and Government Services. You're always welcome here, Minister Finley, and we thank you for being here with us today. I see we have you here with us for the first hour. It's only a couple of $2 billion, so it shouldn't take us more than an hour or so to do our due diligence and examine it. So we'll begin without delay then and ask you for opening remarks, and then we'll go to questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Merci, and I am pleased to be here today to talk about my two departments' main estimates and reports on plans and priorities for the 2015-2016 fiscal year. Excuse me. With me from Public Works and Government Services Canada are Deputy Minister George Dupont and Chief Financial Officer Alex Lacroni. From Shared Services Canada, I'm joined by President Lisanne Foran and Elizabeth Tromp, Acting Senior Assistant ADM, Corporate Services, and their Chief Financial Officer. Travaux publics et services gouvernementaux Canada.
Public Works and Government Services Canada and Shared Services Canada provide essential services to other departments and support our government's commitment to creating jobs, growth, and economic prosperity.
Estimates. Public Works net spending is expected to increase by $30.6 million over the previous year. Now, this is primarily due to the transfer of responsibilities to Public Works from the former Enterprise Cape Breton Corporation, as well as to the rehabilitation of the Parliament buildings, including interim accommodation for the Senate. For Shared Services Canada, the 2015-2016 main estimates represent a total of $1.444 billion and show a net decrease of $127.8 million compared to the previous year. Now, this is due mainly to savings achieved across various key transformation initiatives and a $63.4 million reduction in funding for partners, projects, and initiatives. Au cours de la prochaine année, Travaux publics compte franchir.
Over the next year, PWGSE is looking forward to reaching several milestones.
Gordon, Member of Parliament for Miramichi, officially kicked off the construction of the new Public Service Pay Centre, showing just how far we've come on the Transformation of Pay Administration initiative. Now, the construction of this building will create an estimated 200 jobs, in addition to the 550 employees currently working in the Interim Pay Centre. In fact, by the end of the year, over 140,000 pay accounts will be administered at this new centre. By consolidating pay services into a single building, we will generate approximately $70 million in savings each year starting in 2016-2017. Obviously, that's good news for taxpayers, and it's good news for the people of Miramichi. Another great public works initiative with which you might be familiar is the Build in Canada Innovation Program, or as we fondly refer to it, BCIP. Through this program, our government is kickstarting Canadian businesses by helping them get their innovative products and services from the lab to the marketplace.
One of the biggest hurdles that companies face with new products is making that first sale. As you all know, it can be tough to get someone to take a chance on an untested product or service.
When Canadian companies try to sell their products internationally, the first question they're asked is if the Canadian government is one of their customers. Let me tell you, it is a pretty tough sell when the answer to that question is no. So, it's through this program that the federal government acts as the first buyer of new technology. I'd like to stress to you today that this is not a subsidy or a grant. Companies and their innovations are matched with government departments who could use their innovation to fulfill a real business need. Toutefois, les ministères ne sont pas que de simples clients.
But the government departments are not just customers. After test driving the innovation, they provide real-world evaluation and feedback to suppliers who can then make refinements. We hear all the time that companies find this feedback very useful.
Businesses can demonstrate the value of their products and services to potential customers in Canada and indeed right around the world. With 100 contracts issued since 2010, this program is a great boost to innovative Canadian companies. We're also looking forward to making further progress under our national shipbuilding procurement strategy. Over the next months, Vancouver shipyards will begin construction on the Canadian Coast Guard offshore fisheries science vessel, and Irving Shipbuilding in Halifax will cut steel on the Arctic offshore patrol ship for national defense. Now, the two shipyards are employing hundreds of highly skilled workers, while some 256 companies across Canada have already been engaged in contracts valued at $900 million. Now, this is all thanks to our national shipbuilding procurement strategy, which is helping rebuild a strong Canadian shipbuilding industry and a marine industry that will create an estimated 15,000 jobs over the next 30 years. This long-term approach to building ships will ensure strong jobs and economic growth, stability for the industry, and vital equipment for our men and women in the Royal Canadian Navy and in the Canadian Coast Guard. We're also looking forward to making further progress on our government's new defense procurement strategy. Cette stratégie représente le plus important changement en 30 ans.
This strategy marks the most significant shift in the federal government's purchasing of military equipment in 30 years.
Deliver the right equipment to the Canadian Armed Forces in a timely manner, leverage these purchases to create jobs and growth, and streamline our procurement processes. Now, while we've made progress at the implementation of this strategy, I am looking forward to taking further steps to its implementation. Value propositions are beginning to be applied to procurements and will continue to be applied on a systematic basis going forward. Now, if I may, I'd like to turn to Shared Services Canada. SSC continues to modernize and consolidate our government's IT infrastructure. Par ailleurs, le regroupement des centres de données.
Our data center consolidation will also continue over the course of the fiscal year, as aging data centers are closed and replaced by a small number of modern, secure, and highly efficient ones.
They will standardize processes, and perhaps most importantly, they will tighten security. We've established 3 enterprise data centers already and closed 57 data centers over the past 2 years. Savings of $14.5 million have been achieved already through consolidation and renegotiation of data center contracts under Economic Action Plan 2012. In the course of executing this part of the plan, SSC has identified over 200 additional existing data centers, the vast majority of which are small rooms within office buildings. And while we originally planned for 485 aging facilities to be replaced by no more than 7 modern, secure, reliable centers, opportunities, which include better than expected pricing and the use of cloud computing, will allow Shared Services Canada to now consolidate over 700 data centers to no more than 4 or 5 by 2020. SSC is also helping modernize our telephone system by moving away from conventional and, quite frankly, costly desktop phones to cellular service or voice-over internet protocol phones where possible. Believe it or not, this has already generated ongoing savings of approximately $28.8 million a year. La sécurité des Canadiennes et des Canadiens.
The safety and security of Canadians continues to be one of the government's top priorities. Shared Services Canada is building a secure, centralized communications infrastructure that directly supports Canada's cybersecurity strategy. SSC works closely with government security partners to protect government systems from cyber threats and intrusions.
Services will work with industry experts to identify best practices and approaches. By providing secure, cost-effective, and robust IT architecture, SSC is making it possible for partner departments to achieve their priorities and better deliver services and programs to Canadians. The total amount that the government has saved since SSC's creation is now $209 million each year. That's $150 million through the consolidation of existing services and the reduction of overhead, $50 million through email transformation, and $9 million through the consolidated procurement of hardware and software for workplace technology devices. Monsieur le Président, Travaux publics et services partagés.
Mr. Chair, PWGSC and SSC are tasked with very broad and complex responsibilities. While difficulties can and do arise, overall, I'm pleased with the progress that has been made by both departments over the last fiscal year.
Of steady progress in achieving cost savings, better services, and greater security for the Government of Canada and for the citizens that it serves. So thank you very much for this, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Minister Finlay, and I'm sure the questioners look forward to questioning you equally. Beginning for the official opposition, Mr. Matthew Rabignat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being here. We don't always have the best of luck getting ministers to come here to protect their plans and priorities or their estimates, so I'm happy to see you today. I'd like to ask you a question about the search and rescue RFP. Mr. Perry, as you know, a well-known expert, said that the fact that the request for proposals of the RFP is out is a good sign, but that RFP has been out before and nothing's moved on it. So can you give us assurances that actually something will be done about search and rescue vehicles in this country?
Well, you know, we've made it very clear that we want to make sure that our men and women in uniform have the equipment they need to do the job that we ask of them, and that's right across the range. And we've invested through our defense procurement strategy and indeed Canada First program significantly in getting that equipment for them. There have been some false starts on the fixed wing program. We have made a point, though, and I've personally been involved with this, in engaging industry so that we can develop a better RFP. That was one of the problems in the past. The new RFP has been issued. We have every intent of seeing that through, and we expect that in the fall of 2016, the first contract award will be made.
Can you give us a sense of what exactly is going to be delivered in the next year?
Well, what we're doing is during the call for March, we released the RFP. This is quite a complicated procurement because we're asking the proponents to design essentially a system, respecting the 3 different regions of Canada for search and rescue, and we're asking them to come up with not just equipment, but a plan that will be effective and efficient in doing search and rescue so that the citizens get the best service possible at the most efficient price. There are a lot of possible configurations for this. It's going to take the proponents some time to do the analysis and put together what they believe will be the best solution.
Well, obviously, this is an important issue. We're talking about the safety of Canadians. And can you say anything to reassure Canadians that there will actually be vehicles in operation in the near future?
Well, we do have vehicles in operation. As you know, the Buffalo Fleet.
In operation.
The Buffalo Fleet has been renovated, but we do work with our other partners as well on this to make sure that the service is provided. What we want to do is make sure that going forward we do get the right equipment in the right configuration.
Moving on to personnel, necessary expertise in the Canadian military. There seems to be money there. There doesn't seem to be a lot of hiring going on. There's been, for example, industry watchers have said that the military has lost many skilled workers and cutbacks in the previous decades. Can you tell me if there's a strategy in place to actually come to some kind of analysis and some kind of progress with regards to making sure that we have highly trained, we have the expertise necessary in our military?
I'm sorry you'd have to address that question to the Minister of Defense. That's not within my purview.
Okay. Good to know. Moving on, we'll be changing it to French, so just to let the translators know. Dans le dossier du contrat.
Yes. In the relocation contracts, there has been no proposal offer, and we know that the government was to pay $30 million for unfair treatment, and that the question will come to an end at the end of April. What will Public Works do since then? Have there been any new practices been put in place with respect to this issue, and with respect to the management of integrated relocation? Yes, something has been done. At the very beginning, the contract was extended so that we could assess the marketplace to ensure that there were companies able to meet the requirements of the tender, but the government departments are in the process of assessing their own policies in that respect. And did you assess the problem that existed in the past? That is, the fairness of the tender process, to ensure that the tender process was open and had reasonable competitive criteria. Could you give us a general idea of what has been done? Of course, we heard the comments made by the Auditor General, but it's very difficult in this industry. There is only one big corporation, and when it comes to small companies, well, they have to consolidate. So that makes the whole process difficult. So we have to look at all of our options and either issue a big contract or smaller contracts. What's in the best interest of taxpayers? That's what the question we have to ask.
Next, for the Conservatives, we'll hear from Mr. Brad Butt. 5 minutes, please. Brad.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Minister. Welcome, and to you and all your officials, thank you for taking time to appear before the Government Operations and Estimates Committee, as you always do when we ask, and we're certainly appreciative of hearing the initiatives within the various departments and the work that's being done. I want to ask for some more background, Minister, on the Build Canada Innovation program. In my riding in Mississauga-Streetsville, we have hundreds and hundreds of small businesses, and often when I meet with them and talk to them, including the Streetsville Business Improvement Association as an example, one of the issues that does come up is, how do I sell to the Government of Canada? How do I get my product, service, whatever? How do I participate in the tendering process? You know, I think I've got something innovative that the government could use to make systems or things more efficient, more effective. And obviously, as their local member of parliament, I mean, I try and and get them through the hoops that are necessary to get there. But maybe you could take a bit of time to talk a little bit in a little bit more detail. I know you did mention in your opening comments that you said through this program, the government is kickstarting Canadian businesses by helping them get their innovative products and services from the lab to the marketplace. So maybe if you can take a bit of time and explain a little bit more about that program, and then just generally what we're doing to help small businesses in particular sell their goods and services to the Government of Canada.
Well, I really appreciate that question because small business really is the backbone of our economy. 9 out of 10 jobs are in small and medium enterprises, SMEs. Those same companies create 3 out of every 4 new jobs. So it's really important to us that we support them. And in fact, some 39% of all the procurement that Public Works does for the government is done with small business. I think I'm really proud of that because there was a day when it wasn't that high a number, but we respect small business. We try to make sure that we include them. In fact, that's why we've set up the Office for Small and Medium Enterprises, OSME. And it's OSME that actually administers the Building Canada Innovation Program, to which you refer, BCIP. This is an exciting program that was trialed a couple of years ago. We've since made it permanent, doubled the funding for it, and so it's now $40 million a year. There's $20 million component just for military. And this is, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is a program that's not a subsidy, but where we identify companies that have really interesting products or services that are then purchased by a government department to match a real business need. Now, these are products that probably aren't quite ready for prime time yet, but working with the department trials these products or services, identifies where they could be improved, and then goes back to the company and says, okay, here you go. This is what we see as opportunities for improvement. Company fixes it, goes back to the department, they try it again, and 9 times out of 10, at least 9 times out of 10, there's success. So the company benefits in getting that real-world exposure and the trial to perfect their product or service. The government department gets a real business need met with something that's brand new, and the company gets the benefit and the cachet, if you like, of having the Government of Canada as a customer, which adds a lot of credibility, especially when they're trying to sell worldwide. I've met with a number of the companies, the owners of these companies that have come up with these products. Some of them truly are innovative. Some of them are world-leading in their field, so it really feels good to have, to be able to support companies that are now focusing perhaps 80% of their, for whom perhaps 80% of their revenue is now coming from offshore. So it's a real kickstart program, and it's a win-win all the way around. But I would point out that the next call for proposals on this will be this summer, so people could check it out on the website.
Okay. Can you just expand on your comment in your opening statement, Minister, when you said from the lab to the marketplace? What exactly does that entail? Is it someone coming forward with a new innovation, just running it by officials in the government or in your department to sort of say this is what it is and what it does? Because you mentioned it's not, this isn't a subsidy program or a grant program. It's a program designed to help and support these small businesses. So can you just clarify that one line there, because I want to get more clarification on exactly what the role is the department is playing.
I'd be happy to. In fact, I'll give you an example. One product developed just across the river in Gatineau, very innovative. It's a security device. I won't go into too much detail for security reasons. It's a security device that D&D decided to purchase. They tried it out. They found that there were, believe it or not, some temperature issues, so that this particular product couldn't operate in all temperatures when they tried it. So they went back to the manufacturer. Manufacturer made some adjustments, more than once, in fact. But they got it so it did work. And now the military is using that particular device, and there is a huge, huge international market for this product, both with militaries, but also in the commercial sector. And To me, it's a really exciting program because it will help overcome a lot of problems within this particular field in terms of security, in terms of even business and international exports.
Well, thank you, Mr. Butt. That concludes your time. Thank you, Minister. Next for the NDP, Tariq Brahmi.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Minister, a year ago, you announced the creation of an Institute for Defense Analysis with a very good mix of panelists, academics, industry representatives. What type of progress has been achieved resulting from this? We launched an interim institute to determine how we should build the actual institute, the current one. They are in the process of doing this work now. They consult with the government, industry, with all of the industry companies in defense, and we've included in our economic action plan money to launch this institute, which will have a budget of $2.5 million. So we're in the process of determining how it should be structured. In terms of staff, how many people will be working in this institute? They are still working on this, but when I talk about structure, I'm talking about who, how much, all that. Do you have any preliminary reports or any status reports, or have no reports been made with respect to the proposed solutions? We are waiting for the report and for the recommendations, and we will read it very carefully. So there is no date set for a preliminary report. Has anything changed in the process with respect to military procurement in Canada? Because that's their objective, to find a way to improve the procurement process. One of their goals is to establish who is in the industry in Canada. We don't have a repository. We don't have a list, if you like, of all of our capacity in Canada. That is, companies that provide services and equipment to the rest of the world in the defense area. Therefore, it's very important that we list our capacity, who produces the services and products. That's one of the goals, because with this, we're going to be able to promote these companies through our embassies throughout the world when it comes to exports, but also for people who want to build, manufacture equipment here in Canada, who are looking for partners. It's very important to determine who potential partners are with respect to foreign companies. A year ago, at the same time, more or less, you unveiled with another minister the new defense procurement policy, I'm talking about the beginning of 2014. A year has elapsed. What type of findings came out stem from this guide? Have weaknesses been pointed out in the way that the procurement process works? Did you get any kind of feedback from the use of this guide? We're still consulting industry members. For instance, last year, I sent an email to more than 80 suppliers of services and goods to the government. I received replies from about 400 companies, and they came up with suggestions as to how to enhance the procurement process, the consultative process, all kinds of things. So we are still listening to industry. I spend hours in meetings listening to members from the sector to learn. We've discovered several things, and we've included these enhancements in the process. That's why when we have large procurement contracts, for example, military material, we reverse the process. We used to come out with an RFP, request for proposal, and then we consulted industry. But we reversed this process, and now industry can inform us before the RFP goes out. And this has shortened the process. It's quicker now.
Thank you, Mr. Bromley. Then we'll return to the Conservatives. Mr. Dan Albus, 5 minutes, please, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to be here with your committee today. And Minister, I'm very happy that you and officials are here today. Minister, sometimes I think that oftentimes parliamentarians only relay complaints to ministers. I think there's appropriate where that happens. But I just would like to highlight a few things that are important to my riding of Okanagan-Coquihalla. A few years back, I had the opportunity of some of the officials from Shared Service Canada to question them specifically on the accessibility of websites. I had a resident who is blind and had to rely on very cheap software or free software, and some of the changes that were made by when Shared Services Canada had made the Government of Canada websites more and more accessible was really a thrill to him, because he was able to feel that he was part of the country, able to ask and seek information about government programs that affect him or policies that affect him. And that certainly is an important thing. So I just wanted to say that that's been important in my riding. Some further feedback, and of course this isn't directed at you, Minister, but he also wishes that the Parliament of Canada, that its websites were just as accessible. Obviously, Parliament is not a government agency, and so it has its own processes for putting those in place. But I would certainly, encourage those officials who are set in charge of our websites to take a look at what Shared Services Canada, because it's won quite good accolades in my riding. Furthermore, I had the opportunity to talk to someone who had worked in Ottawa for a number of years for a subcontractor, done a lot of military work, to ask about Shared Services Canada's approach. Did he agree that there would be a fair bit of savings, Minister? And from your presentation today, it shows that, first of all, that there has been quite a lot of savings. Just right across government. I'm happy to see that Moore's Law is being reflected in that we have new data centers that are able to consolidate operations that previously would have to be done by probably 3 or 4 centers into one. Actually, I think some of the numbers here are much higher than that. And he also did emphasize to me that the security is much better for the government, because it's far easier to look after a smaller amount of resources than it is to go after each, to have hundreds of these centers being watched out. So there's a number of things that are here. But Minister, in your statement, you showed that the main estimates represents a total of $1.44 billion, and of course a net decrease. Is there specific files that you think that the Canadian public would benefit from hearing about? Because again, there's big savings, great security for the government. What other elements do you think would be important for my taxpayers to hear about?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that we're doing the consolidation through Shared Services Canada for a number of reasons. One is to update and modernize the systems and communications so that they're more relevant, they're more responsive. Secondly, we want to respect taxpayers' dollars to make sure that we are getting the maximum service for the dollar. And so far, last year alone, Shared Services Canada saved $150 million. So that's significant. Going forward, the number is, what, $500 million a year?
400.
$400 million a year by the time the transformation is complete. But another aspect is security, because when we had, as we did previously, so many different unconnected systems, the security aspect of monitoring them was really quite a challenge. And Shared Services Canada has, through the consolidation that they've already seen, has eliminated a number of entry points, which is a good thing. But they've also been able to put in place much better cybersecurity systems, be much more responsive to attacks. As we've seen a couple of times in the last year, they were able to recognize things, get on top of them right away, and then to fix them and take that knowledge that was learned from those experiences and apply them across the government, so thereby enhancing security awareness across the board. So there's savings, there are efficiencies and increased security. I think that's a pretty good package, and it means that with higher security, we're going to be able to, and more efficient and more responsive systems, we will be able to serve Canadians better, because more and more they are turning to our internet portals for services, whether it be just to get information or things like setting up direct deposit accounts, or indeed transacting business through their personal accounts for themselves, or indeed their own businesses.
Fortunately, Mr. Elvis, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Very quickly.
Appreciate the interaction. Thanks.
Then we will go to the second vice chair of the committee, Mr. Jerry Byrne for the Liberal Party.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, and your officials for appearing before us. I want to return to the shipbuilding program. You indicated that the shipbuilding program is going exceptionally well, which is a philosophy or an idea that's not shared by many outside of the government. It's actually been described as being on the rocks by most commentators. I want to return to the BC, to the West Coast shipbuilding program and the non-combat vessels. C-SPAN has been notionally awarded an $8 billion contract, but have yet to indicate that they have the necessary capacity to be able to fulfill the contract. There is some controversy brewing about how C-SPAN can actually acquire or get to that point. They have until June of this year, I understand, to actually fulfill its requirements under the notional agreement before a formal contract can be awarded. What are plans for the Esquimalt graving docks? Are there talks underway that that C-SPAN or some other operator might acquire through a lease, a long-term lease, the rights to be able to operate exclusively or near exclusively at the Esquimalt graving docks?
Okay, well, these are two totally unrelated questions, so I'll deal with the first one first. We're very confident in the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. We're seeing good success so far. Both Vancouver and Irving in Halifax have invested heavily, not with taxpayers' money, in renovating and building the capacity, physical capacity and infrastructure to do the shipbuilding. In fact, some 300 new jobs have been created in Vancouver at C-SPAN. They're expecting 700 more over the next several years of the contract. I was there, and as we cut steel on the first test block several months ago, and hope to be we expect to be cutting steel on the offshore fishery science vessel this summer, as well as in Halifax. Already, we're seeing tremendous progress there. We have every reason to believe they're going to be successful in cutting steel on the AOPS by September. So I think it's going really well. Obviously, the industry had been allowed to languish for many, many, many years. In fact, we virtually had no large shipbuilding industry in this country. So you can't go from 0 to 100 right out of the chute. It's taken time to build the proper facilities for the proponents to develop the in-house expertise that's necessary to develop the contracts, to do all these things. But I'm really confident that we are rebuilding the shipbuilding industry in Canada. It's going to be around for a long time to come. We're building strong companies with strong capabilities. And the naysayers Well, they can go and wait and watch, because I think we're going to disappoint them. We will succeed with this, and we will
Minister,
create...
rather than waiting and watching, why don't you explain to this committee exactly what C-SPAN has to do in order to be able to fulfill its requirements to be successfully awarded a contract? They have until June to provide evidence that they are capacity ready. What has to be accomplished between then and now, and as part of that process, are they in discussions to take over the Esquimalt graving docks under a lease basis?
Well, as I say, Esquimalt graving docks are a completely separate issue that does not relate to the contract to build the science vessel for the Coast Guard. That's what we're focused on. That's what they're focused on. We're working very closely with them. We have people on site to make sure, and they've given us every indication that they will meet all the requirements so that we can go ahead and cut steel on those for that particular vessel. This is a process. We've come a long way in just a few short years, and I have every confidence that they will succeed.
So, Minister, what you're saying is that there's nothing really specific that C-SPAN has to accomplish. They should be able to be contract ready by June of 2015, and will you explain to us exactly what it is that they have to do in order to meet that requirement? What has to be accomplished?
Well, there are expectations that have been laid out with them, obviously, before we sign any contract. We do that with every country, or every company with whom we sign contracts. I'm not going to go into the details of a private enterprise contract, but I have every confidence that they will achieve that. They have been bringing in new talent and working hard with the people and the community and with my members of my department.
So just so I'm clear, to meet basic bid requirements which they tendered for, which they were accepted for, you deem that to be a commercial confidence?
No, what?
In terms of capacity, which was really required to actually be able to participate in this contract, which was an open tendering process, we presume, you're saying now that that's a commercial confidentiality? No,
what I'm saying is the discussions that are ongoing are competitive in nature, and as part of the negotiations, I'm not prepared to disclose.
But they've already been assigned the contract, or the notional contract. What's competitive about this at this point in time? Is there a possibility that it could be reassigned to another contractor?
What I've said is competitive in nature, all right, commercially competitive information. I'm not about to reveal their competitive information any more than I'd reveal your personal data.
I'm afraid, Mr. Byrne, Minister, I'll have to interrupt there. You're well over time. Next, then, for the Conservatives, Ms. Y. Young. 5 minutes, please, Ms. Young.
Thank you, Minister, for being here today, and for your team for all the extensive information that you provided to us today. And given that the member opposite has talked a little bit about Vancouver shipyards, coming from Vancouver, from BC, I just wanted to provide an opportunity to share with this committee and put on the record how excited, how truly excited we in Vancouver are about C-SPAN and the shipbuilding procurement strategy. Several years ago, I was actually very fortunate to have been part of the announcement and attended when hundreds of people came together in a room to look at the procurement strategy and what that would entail. And the excitement in that room was palpable in companies that were there. And I noted in your presentation that you had said that there's an estimated 15,000 jobs over the next 30 years, and that some 256 companies across Canada were engaging in contracts for over $900 million. And I just want to share with you that excitement. I mean, those small and medium-sized enterprises, many of whom were doing a number of different things, because I think building a scientific vessel is a very complicated thing. So whether you're in electronics or steel or metal or, you know, like all of those guidance systems and et cetera, they were all there. And this has done an incredible, had an incredible impact to Vancouver, because they've taken an underutilized site and they spent the last couple of years rebuilding that site to get ready for the shipbuilding. And Minister, you said, I think, that you were there last month. I hope you enjoyed your visit there and the tour, because I've certainly, over the last few years, taken advantage of being local and touring those facilities and seeing the true transformation. And I'm sure that anybody that's interested can log on to the C-SPAN website, because they as a company are extremely proud of the transformation of the site, where they've had to tear down buildings, relocate other buildings, build a whole new set of buildings, because these had to be very large buildings in order to accommodate the cutting of the steel. And in fact, they had actually installed the largest crane, they say, in Canada. And they had a local school naming contest for this big giant crane that is now part of this skyline of Vancouver, but in a nice way. Like, everybody loves this crane. It's called Big Blue. And so it's been an incredible transformation to see how our government has leveraged public works to create jobs and strengthen our economy. So my question, I guess, Minister, is, was that a new strategy in terms of the government? Why wasn't this done previously? Because there was no shipbuilding whatsoever in Canada prior to this. And how can we continue through your programs, like you said earlier, with the SME program and et cetera, to do that, to create even yet more jobs in the future?
Well, it was the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy, when we launched it 3 years ago, was definitely something new that our government brought in, because we recognize that we need ships for our military, but also for the Coast Guard. And we used to have that capacity here in Canada to build them. We didn't anymore, because for years there had actually been a conscious effort, I believe, to shut down the shipbuilding industry in Canada, send it offshore. We wanted to create those good jobs here. We wanted to have a sustainable industry. One of the reasons the industry shut down was because in the past it was boom or bust. Everybody was really busy, or there was no work to do. And so thousands of people got laid off in the bust years. And then when companies tried to ramp up for big production, they couldn't find those people because they'd found other jobs. So we wanted, as we laid out the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy, we did it in such a way that what we're trying to do is first of all, develop the capacity here to build those ships. Secondly, to plan the work over 20, 30 years in such a way that we will have an industry that is sustained over that whole period of time. So it's eliminate the boom and bust cycle, create jobs. You know, people think about ships these days and they think, oh yeah, it's all welding. When in fact, the greatest value in those ships, the most expensive parts, are all the high-tech stuff. The electronics, the navigation systems, the defense systems. I've toured these, and it's absolutely amazing, the technology that's in them and the high-skilled jobs that are needed or people in high-skilled jobs that are needed to produce them. It really is an amazing thing. And I'm really pleased that we are developing this industry and that we're putting in place programs and planning that will support this industry for years to come. I mean, not only that, but the companies have to invest in Canada. They can't just, the two leads, can't just outsource everything offshore. They have to invest in Canada. And so far in BC alone, there's some $150 million that has been spent locally with local companies as C-SPAN has ramped up its operations in Vancouver.
Thank you, Minister. I hate to interrupt you, but Ms. Young, your time is concluded. Thank you. That concludes our first round of questioning, but we still have the Minister with us, I believe, for another 10 minutes. That would leave time for one round for the NDP and one round for the Conservatives, if that's agreeable to committee members. Okay, the next turn then is for Mr. Ravenette, the NDP.
So there have been concerns that have been raised about the security issues for Service Canada, Shared Services Canada, particularly with regards to Bell's involvement. So I'd like to know what you have to say about that. Do you think that Bell, for example, has the expertise necessary? How are you ensuring that data is being protected while this transition is going on?
Lizanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. As the Minister mentioned in her remarks earlier about Shared Services Canada, improving security of data, security of information, cybersecurity is one of the key benefits that we're seeking to achieve through the transformation and modernization of IT infrastructure. And that is true of all of the initiatives that we have underway. And I think the honourable member is talking about our email transformation initiative. The contract for that was awarded to Bell Canada in partnership with CGI and Microsoft in June of 2013. And security of data, security of systems is one of the key objectives of that contract. Our colleagues at Communication Security Establishment Canada have stated time and again that email systems can be a vulnerability for IT infrastructure. And so,
sorry to interrupt you there, because thanks for the context, but I guess I'd like to know what practically is being done to ensure the safety of data.
So practically speaking, security has been built in from the beginning through the security clearance of staff, through the security clearance of all the facilities in which they're working, as well as right into the infrastructure of the systems. It's had to go through a very rigorous security authorization and accreditation process, which was overseen by CSEC. And it continues to be a key component of the project. We have worked very hard with the contractors to make sure that the data is secure, the data centers are located in Canada, the data must be Canadian when it is in place as well as when it is in motion. That means the networking all has to be secured as well.
And are you confident that the players that are at the table, Bell, et cetera, Microsoft, really have a good sense of what our security needs are with regards to data, particularly in the public service and serving the public?
Thank you. That was an excellent point. That we have also worked very hard through the RFP process, as well as with the winning contractor of Bell, and so we make sure from stem to stern that it is safe and that they understand it. One of the things that we've brought in as part of our procurement and building processes is something we call supply chain integrity, whereby we also make sure that every piece of equipment, every piece of gear, every contractor, every subcontractor is using trusted equipment, and we use the security agencies to give us that assurance as we go through. Yes, we believe that we have definitely emphasized with the contractors and their whole team that security is absolutely key for us, and we will not approve the email system for use across government until we are absolutely confident it's secure.
Well, Canadians will be watching. There's no doubt about it. And there's been, as you know, events in the past where viruses have caused crashing servers, and hopefully you've taken into consideration that experience in the past as you go forward. Let me just ask the minister, and I'll be switching into French. A
few weeks ago, I asked you a question with respect to Place du Portage 3 in particular, the presence of bacteria and Legionnaire's disease. You answered in the House that you didn't deny that there was in fact a problem. You said that the level of risk was low, except you didn't address the whole delay problem, the delay between the time when it was found out that the virus was present and the time when the information was provided to the public servants who worked in these premises and ensured that they were well informed of the problem. I'm wondering, therefore, if since then have you assessed the situation further, and perhaps could you reassure these public servants who, as you know, live in my riding and in the National Capital Region? What have you done to ensure that these employees will be working in a safe environment? It's very important for us to ensure that the safety and security of employees is first and foremost. On May 14th, the public health work assessment.
Bacteria. Alors, c'est pourquoi nous avons poursuivi des étapes.
That's why we took measures, but since then, We have been insured
basis, both weekly and monthly at different levels. And
my concern isn't so much the fact that there's been analysis, and I award you for that diligence, but it's the delay in informing the public servants when it did happen.
Mr. Rodney,
Have you looked at what has happened there?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to interrupt you. That would be a comment more than a question. We're well over time, and in all fairness, Mr. Guy Lazon has been waiting patiently for his 5 minutes, and this will be the last round.
Chair, I'd like to welcome the minister and her colleagues. Boy, I've heard, I'm a pretty enthused guy right now. I've heard some pretty neat stuff. One of the things that really caught my ear is, and I think you confirm this, is that because of some changes you made with the SSC, the government is saving $209 million per year, correct?
By the time the transformation is complete, it'll be $400 million a year.
In other words, every 5 years, there's going to be $1 billion of savings. Mm-hmm. And I think, Mrs. Ferran, or Ms. Ferran, you said that it's going to get up to $400 million? So in other words, in every 5 years, we'll save $2 billion. That is the kind of government that I think that we want to have in place. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to make sure. It was actually music to my ears. One of the other things, just a personal note. I used to get a lot of we used to get a lot of inquiries at my office that people couldn't use websites and that. I think you mentioned the IT has improved greatly. I'm not getting those comments as people are. I think your websites are becoming from the various departments. All the departments seem to be more user friendly. As a matter of fact, I was on one yesterday for Canada 150. And it was really usable. Even I could use it, so that's a good testament. That's nice to hear. The other thing I like, what I heard is about the 256 companies. My riding is a sort of a middle-class riding, and we have, over the years we've had challenges with employment. And now we find that our companies are working, like shipbuilding has got nothing to do with my riding. We're between both oceans. But quite frankly, we're excited about that because we're going to get a heck of a lot of contracts, especially from the East Coast. We've got a lot of fabricators in my riding. You mentioned small businesses. These folks, they're creating jobs, and when you hire another welder at sometimes $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, that adds to our economy. So all that is good. Like I said, there's a lot of good things I heard here. You talked about the Miramichi call center. Well, I happen to. For the last 5 years, we have a call center in our riding, and it's like an anchor tenant at a mall. When you have a good government facility like that, it encourages other people to invest. It encourages our community has improved over the last 5 years as a result. So I'm very happy for Miramichi. My question for the minister, though, like you mentioned, 15,000 jobs for the next 30 years with shipbuilding. So we've managed to, probably in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, we'll be dealing with everybody in the world. We have 38 free trade agreements already and growing. So is there a way to take this expertise, like you said about the ups and downs in ship, is there a way that once we can do our work, can we expand that to can we sell our expertise to other countries, I guess is what I'm asking, our shipbuilding expertise, because after 10 or 15 years, we're going to be in pretty good shape, I would think.
Well, it's going to take a little longer than that, but because we've had a decade of darkness where equipment just wasn't bought for our forces, but we're fixing that. It's a long, slow process. So there's a lot to be done, and we've achieved a lot already. We have the labs, and we've got the C-130Js, and we've got the helicopters. Oh, and we're going to be taking delivery of the new Cyclone helicopters next month. That's really exciting since they were canceled back in the early 90s. So we'll be able to start retiring the Sea Kings. But it is our hope that through the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy and indeed the Defense Procurement Strategy, these companies, these Canadian companies, will be able to work and continue to work with the Minister of International Trade and his people to develop their export business. People investing in Canada who want to supply the Canadian government will partner with Canadian companies to fill Canadian needs. That will create jobs. Exporting creates jobs, And all of that is really good for the Canadian economy because, as you know, our priority is jobs, economic growth, and long-term prosperity. So we can support Canadian business by rebuilding the shipbuilding industry, by supporting them through the Building Canada Innovation Program, where the government is a customer, by making sure that as we do our everyday procurement, that we make it possible for small business in Canada to do business with government, and that's what the Office for Small and Medium Enterprise is there for. They've held over 4,000 different meetings and seminars and webinars to help small Canadian businesses learn how to do business with the Government of Canada. As I said, 39% of our volume goes to them now. So all of these things are going to help create local jobs, create exports, which is money coming into the country, not going out. It all works, and we're going to end up with strong, not just shipbuilding industry, but we already have a strong Canadian defense services and products industry. In fact, I think we're about number 7 in the world or higher. It's going to be even stronger going forward. We're laying those foundations right now for long-term success.
Thank you, Mr. Lauzon. Thank you, Minister. And on that cheery note, we will conclude the 1 hour we have set aside for the Minister to be with us here today. And I'll suspend the meeting briefly while the Minister leaves us, and we will resume then with the next witnesses.
Thank you,
Meeting is
Mr. Chair.
suspended. Thank you for being here, Minister.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we will reconvene our meeting then, examining the main estimates with a new group of witnesses have joined us at the table. And we're going to just go until 12:45, committee members, because we want to deal with the votes so that we can report the main estimates to the House of Commons. And we also want to very briefly discuss future business for upcoming meetings. I notice that a few members are out of the room, but I believe in the interest of time we should get started. Can I ask who will be making the presentation for Shared Services Canada? Ms. Foran?
We don't have any prepared remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we will leave the Minister's remarks on the subject to stand as your presentation, and we'll go right into questioning then with the official opposition, Matthew Rabignat.
So I guess the first question I would have for you is that I would call it, a considerable amount of confusion within the public service with regards to how Shared Services Canada is going to result in efficiencies for them. So I guess my question to you is, what's being done to inform them with regards to the changes that are coming? And I'll have a follow-up question to that, so we'll start there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The transformation agenda that Shared Services Canada is responsible for really is a Government of Canada transformation agenda and will affect every public servant in terms of how they work, the equipment that they have to do their work, the security, IT security that they can rely on. So we consider that engagement with public servants, both within our own department in terms of how their workplace and work will change over the next 5 to 7 years, as well as broader public servants, is very critical. And we've actually used the opportunity of the Clerk's Initiative for Blueprint 2020, which sets out a vision for the public service in 2020, to point out that, in fact, that vision cannot be achieved if we don't do the infrastructure modernization that we are doing as part of our agenda. So we've pointed out that for that to be possible, we need better computing capacity, we need more storage capacity. Our data center consolidation program will increase storage capacity by 7 times, which, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is important in a world of big data. It's also important for public servants to be able to connect with one another more easily and more on an ongoing basis. So our transformation agenda will increase bandwidth, for example, by at least 4 times, which, as you can probably appreciate, is critical for streaming data, for video conferencing, for enabling public servants in the regions to be full participants of the work. So there's a number of areas in which the transformation is really going to improve the workplace for public servants.
When I speak to public servants, most of them that I speak to say that what was good about the old system, particularly when it comes to email, is that it was responsive to differing needs. I'm sure that's not the first time you hear that, and that there's a considerable amount of fear with regards to going to the shared services, because they're going to lose that kind of flexibility. They're going to lose those needs that they have specific to their workplace and specific even to their category or job. So what can you tell them to reassure them that this system, this kind of one-fits-all system, is going to actually allow them to do their job more efficiently?
Thank you for that question. One of the metrics that we track within Shared Services Canada is the number of incidents that affect mission-critical IT systems across government. So that's beyond email, but in some departments, email is a mission-critical system. So we track those numbers all across government on an ongoing basis. And I'm happy to say that compared to the 12-13, in 13-14, we had a 20% improvement in mission-critical incidents. That means there were 20% fewer. So in fact, our way of consolidating the oversight and the management, improving our processes, change management processes, problem resolution management, is actually improving the service that departments are getting. Because while some departments were very well served under the old system, a large department, for example, like CRA, top of the line, state-of-the-art IT, many departments were not as well served. They were small. They didn't have the bench strength in terms of service capability, in terms of restoring service, in terms of modernizing their equipment. So we're confident that the new consolidated approach on email and in other areas as well will deliver improved service for public servants across the system.
Turning to the delays. Are there financial repercussions with regards to the contract between yourself and Bell with regards to these delays? Are they getting off scot-free?
The contract to deliver a single email system is a large contract, and it is quite a complex undertaking. The way the contract is structured, however, we only pay for the email service as users migrate onto the email service. And so the fact that there's been delays in migration has not had a financial impact on us from that perspective. We do have to keep the legacy systems running, and we've consolidated and improved and streamlined our ability to do that. So we're able to stay current with our costs that way. So no, there haven't been any impacts from that perspective. And frankly, we want to make sure, as suggested by your previous question, we want to make sure the system is absolutely sure and well functioning before we move people onto it. And so the fact that we don't have to pay until they do enables us to protect our financial interests as well.
So you can assure Canadians that it's not like a construction company that finds new costs and then suddenly you're dishing out more taxpayers' money for this contract.
I can assure you that we're only paying for what we contracted for, and at this point, we're not paying until people move onto the system.
The time's up, Mr. Revenant. Thank you very much. And next for the Conservatives, Mr. Kerr. Greg Kerr, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome. I want to go back to a topic that was raised earlier, and that's the shipbuilding program itself. Obviously, you don't commit $33 billion to the economy of Canada without having some massive impact. And I noticed recently the bank economists declared that it was going to be worth 1.5% growth in Nova Scotia economy alone in the coming years, year over year. So it's a substantial part of that province. I'm also aware that one of the companies that has picked up some of the contracting, separate from this, just committed $50 to $60 million in PEI, unrelated shipbuilding, but because of they wanted to grow into the economy. I also know that there are a number of small shipbuilding firms that have really captured both the atmosphere, I guess you could say, but the opportunity, particularly in Europe, in a number of ways, in the smaller ships, and they're looking forward to the $2 billion that's going to be spent on maintenance and so on. I don't know how this is going to be calculated going forward, but obviously there'll be a few glitches if you want to discuss those. But I think the big thing here, the big thing that we've got to talk about is the massive impact this has over a 25 to 30-year span on the economy and the spin-offs. I know a number of small sector companies. I went to a number of the briefings around the province, and to have the economic side talk about it, what a lot of small companies that had nothing to do with shipbuilding or nothing to do with engineering realized if they could get a sub-contract, in other words, if they spent the money and invested and geared up, they would be pretty well guaranteed work for a long time, 20 to 25 years. And many of them said this is incredibly unusual to be able to bid and make that kind of investment in growing your small firms. And I noticed the number is 200, 300, whatever the number of companies is. These are spread across the country. I wonder if you could elaborate on that and talk about some of the impacts that maybe you notice more at the staff level, or what you anticipate.
Well, thank you very much for that question. And as you said, and as the Minister highlighted, one of the main purposes of the National Shipbuilding Strategy has actually been to rebuild the shipping industry. And I think we've seen a great deal of progress on that in the first phase. Irving Shipyard has invested over $300 million to upgrade its facilities. Seaspan on the West Coast has done the same thing, spending about $170 million of its own money. And I've had the opportunity actually in the last couple of months to tour both those facilities, and I can tell you that we now have a world-class infrastructure in place that's going to be ready and capable of proceeding with the build contracts. We've started, and I think as the committee is well aware, the contract's been let for the building of the Arctic Offshore Patrol Vessel. And I'll use that as an example to highlight what the Minister said is that's a large project, and it will create spin-off benefits for companies throughout Canada, not just in the Irving Shipyard. because a lot of the value, a lot of the big part of the expense is not so much building the vessel itself, but everything that goes on to the vessel, the navigation systems, the sonar systems, and so forth. And as part of the national shipbuilding strategy, when contracts are being let, a great deal of emphasis is being put on value propositions, ensuring that there's ample opportunity and benefits to Canadian industry from that. So we're seeing that beginning, obviously, with the AOPS. As the Minister said, we anticipate being in a position in June to see the start of the Arctic, the offshore fisheries science vessel for the Coast Guard. And we've in fact started the very early stages of a process that will lead to ultimately to a request for proposal for the Canadian surface combatants. So these projects are now actually at the takeoff stage, underway, and they will generate significant spin-off benefits throughout the country for all kinds of firms.
Already?
Oh, geez. Answers only 5 minutes. The NDP, Mr. Tariq Brahmi.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go back to what the Minister was saying earlier. She talked about this new military procurement process, which was enabling us to, well, she said that she reversed the logic behind the program, thereby reducing the time when a project or request for proposal is put forward to industry and the time when industry can come back with a bid. It takes time to put something like that together. If I take the example of Irving, let's say that I'm a company that manufactures devices in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu and I want to compete for a project. What have you changed with respect to the old way of doing things, which to make sure that I have access to these new projects? Because I've heard what the Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu Marine Company said. They said it wasn't possible to bid because it's like a private club. The small subcontractors are not part of this inner circle, this private club. So what are you doing to change the process to allow small businesses to participate? Once again, I'd like to thank you for your question. It's a very good one.
That we've done, as the Minister said, before you actually get into a contract, we have reversed the process. Before, as she said, we would have put out a request for proposal, go through a fair bit of a long, torturous process, find out only at that point what industry capability was, and often we had examples where it led to situations where the capability, what the government was looking for to procure, didn't fit the budget. And it led to a number of failed procurements. By doing the industry engagement up front, and there's been extensive industry engagement, and I'll use again the Arctic Offshore Patrol Vessel as an example. By doing that up front, it leads to a far more realistic request for proposal that actually aligns with what industry capability is, reflects industry advice, and has ensures that we land up with capability and budget. On your issue of the subcontractors, one of the main features of the policy is that everything will be competed. There may be some aspects where, for a particular reason, there's only one possible manufacturer, but the philosophy of the National Shipbuilding Strategy is when you proceed and you get into the subcontracts, all of them will be competitive processes unless there's a very overpowering reason not to do that. The other thing that...
Je comprends ça et je...
I do understand that, and I understand the underlying philosophy, but how does the department ensure that when it tells companies such as Irving that it has to have a transparent process enabling all of the small businesses and medium-sized businesses to make a request for services, because what type of mechanism is in place which in the past was not available? What are the new mechanisms available to ensure that these big corporations are going to respect this? Has there been a change in methodology that has come about?
Shipbuilding strategy is it's the government that's going to continue to set the rules. It's the government that's going to continue to set the framework within which contracts will be let. And as I've indicated, the philosophy is that subcontracts will be competitive. They'll be publicized. There'll be transparent processes around bidding. And that is built into the process. And we also are looking at mechanisms for better industry engagement, as I mentioned, throughout the process. So there'll be more information available to companies, particularly small companies, of when things will be coming up that they might be able to bid on, and what the aspects, what the contract will be looking for. So the idea is more information up front, giving people more information of when a particular item that they might be interested in bidding on is likely to come up, continuing with transparency and continuing with industry engagement and a philosophy of competitive processes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dupont. Mr. Brahmi, you're well over time. Thank you very much. The Conservatives are up next. Is there Mr. Workington? 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate any time that we have the opportunity to have officials before us so that we can grill them, and I'm going to continue that process this morning. We noticed from the estimates that the accommodation and real property services, that the budget for that has increased this coming year. I'm wondering if you could tell me, it looks like the accommodation and real property services has increased its budget by $209 million. Can you explain to me what that accounts for? What's included in that increase?
Part of that is, in essence, a little bit of a bookkeeping issue, which I am not even going to try and explain. I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer to take you through that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. If you compare main estimates to main estimates, you will see that there is an increase. In fact, there is an improvement in the way we are funding our portfolio of real property. We used to seek funding and do another set of exercise and come in supplementary estimates to seek more funding based on forecast usage, etc. The formula has changed now, and we are funded upfront in the main estimates. So it's more transparent, it's more complete, and so that's one dimension. The other dimension is, if you look at operating, it has significantly decreased by about $250 million. The reason for that is that there was an AG recommendation a couple of years ago where the funds do not need to be in the operating vote, but they need to be in the capital vote because the expenditures are deemed to be of capital nature. That $250 million, you see it in capital. So if one look at capital, they think that there is an increase, but in fact there isn't. What I would like to talk about from a general perspective is that the funding remains stable. In fact, there are significant savings in the real property portfolio, specifically with regards to two initiatives that my colleague Pierre-Marc Mongeau could elaborate on. One is space recapture. We are recapturing space from surpluses that do exist everywhere. Second thing, we are modernizing this space, which is using best practice and industry standards. These two initiatives alone are going to yield about $100 $129 to $130 million in 2017-18. So those are not small savings in the real property portfolio.
$130 million in savings. What I'm hearing is that we expect the supplementary estimates with regards to this to be less this year than it's been in the past because it's reflected in the main estimates.
Definitely.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on to one of the biggest infrastructure projects that the Public Works has undertaken with regards to real property is the precinct. Do you have an update? There is a request for additional funds for the rehabilitation work that's ongoing. I think all of us are fully aware that there's a lot going on the precinct. Can you give us an update in terms of the planned expenditure for the precinct and what we might expect to have complete in the next year with regards to this rehabilitation?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. And in fact, a lot of that is laid out in the report on plans and priorities. So let me start with the West Block rehabilitation. We're now about 72% completed, and our expectation is that it would be completed by March of 2016. As you're aware, I'm sure, since it maybe has disrupted some of your operations, we have been undertaking the evacuation activities as the first part of establishing a new visitor welcome center. That work is again scheduled for completion in March of 2016. Similarly, for the Wellington building rehabilitation, the fit-up and the installation of the building, that is about now 92% complete, and again, will be ready next year. We've started work on the Government Conference Center, which includes fit-up, design, and beginning some of the interior work. As you're aware, that'll become the temporary home of the Senate. And again, we're expecting that to be finished in 2016. The final part is the East Block exterior rehabilitation. And again, it's about 15, we expect it to be about 15% complete by March of 2016. So we're making good progress on all of them. The various estimates in front of you reflect the funding for those projects.
Thank you, Mr. Morganton. You're well over the time allocated. Next, for the Liberal Party, Mr. Jerry Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make a quick observation, which I cannot left without noting. The government and the Conservative caucus have made a very, very strong and compelling case that taking $30 billion out of the back pocket of taxpayers, putting it into the hands of the government, getting the government to spend it on a big mega project is really good for the economy and for everybody around us. So I just want to make that observation that the government and the Conservative caucus have made a very strong and compelling case for that. On that note, could the government, could the witnesses, our expert witnesses before us, please update us on the procurement of Canada's replacement of the warfighter project? What's the current status? Are you anywhere near moving towards a final tender?
Yes, I can give you an update. We actually just a couple of weeks ago launched the first step in that process. We have started a process to qualify a small number of warship designers and a small number of combat system integrators that then would be in a position to bid for the actual work. So we are, that's a critical first step. We hope that will be done by the early fall. And then we would proceed obviously into the type of engagement, industry engagement and engagement that would be built around a draft request for proposal, and that process would take a few months. So we have started the process.
So you say that a very small number. Would you be able to further elaborate on that, with specifically who those?
I can't, because that's the whole intent of the process. Is whatever companies present themselves will be evaluated in terms of their overall capacity, and all that meet it will be in the qualified pool.
Okay, so I'm missing something here. You say you've identified a small number, but now you say you
No,
can't.
I said we've started a request for qualification that will lead to the identification, likely of a smaller number.
Likely of a small number. Okay, understood. Thanks very much. So, so basically, you are confirming again to this committee that it will be an open bidding process based on that small number, that what you anticipate to be a very small number.
This will be the qualification exercise that will qualify those firms that will then be able to bid in the process.
Could you elaborate on what some of those qualifications might be?
I think maybe I'll ask Lisa Campbell, the ADM of Acquisitions, to take you through that detail.
Good morning, and thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to talk about the National Shipbuilding Procurement Strategy. I think it's worth...
Fighter we're talking about.
Yep, and if I may just give a bit of an opener. We're 3 years into a 30-year strategy. This is the biggest project, as you noted. The budget's $26 billion for up to 15 ships. As my colleague pointed out, we recently announced a procurement strategy that, in our view, is going to maximize competition. What we've done is had 15 industry engagement sessions to get a better idea of the Canadian capacity, what designs are out there, seeing where it's possible to buy off the shelf so that we don't spend wasted months in a competition when in fact there are existing designs that are available to meet Canada's needs, but also assessing where there's Canadian capacity, not just to contribute on this project, but also to become part of a global supply chain and supply worldwide. So we announced the procurement strategy on May 13th. And over the course of the summer, we're going to be talking to firms, as my colleague mentioned, to see which firms have built designs before, have proven capacity in this area. And then we'll be running a competitive process in the fall for combat systems integrators and warship designers. I would highlight, as was noted earlier, that the ship is one thing, but really the real complexity now is what's on the ship. All of the complex systems allow them to integrate with satellites, with radars, interoperability with our allies. That's where there's a lot of value. That plus in-service support. One of the reasons that we want to use competition throughout the process is that the first ship might not look like the last one. These are going to evolve over time, taking advantage of innovations, of reduction in prices that we should see and benefits over time, and quite frankly also the shipbuilding expertise that we'll develop in Canada.
So you're telling us that we will be fully operational with a replacement aircraft by 2020?
Replacement ships?
Aircraft. I said the war fighter. This is...
Oh, forgive me. I thought you were asking about the Canadian surface combatants.
No, the war fighter. We're not talking about the same thing. The aircraft replacement strategy is deemed the Canadian war fighter aircraft?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there seems to be a disconnect between the question and the answer, but I'm afraid we're pretty well out of time anyways, Mr. Byrne. Perhaps the answer may come up in the context of other questioners, but now it's the Conservatives, Mr. Brad Butt.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. I want to go to, according to the 2015-16 estimates, PWGSC is requesting $2.175 million for accommodation and real property services, which represents an increase of $209.4 million compared to last year. Can you explain what the increase is in the accommodation and real property services program estimates?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. When you look at the RPP reports on plans and priorities, the accommodation program for 15-16, we are looking at $2.1 billion in comparison to main estimates from or year-end, if you like, spending of $2.2 billion. It's fairly stable. There are increases and decreases, however, over the past few years, which I would like to cover. But the most important thing in this plan is the trend over the next few years. So over the past 4 years, there was an increase of $164 million as per the RPP, primarily because of parliamentary precinct rehabilitation, which went from 200 million to 384 million. So that's an increase of 185 million. Also, there is the addition of Cape Breton operations that was transferred to PWGSC in 14-15. That accounts for $40 million. These increases over the past 4 years were offset or reduced by the savings, which are referred to as Budget 2012 saving commitments, which account for $74 million. So over the last 4 years, this accounts for $164 million increase. In summary, because of parliamentary precinct work. Moving forward, what is important to note for the real property portfolio is there are some changes in engineering assets. I will start with. Our work in engineering assets is going to decrease by $53 million, not because of unfunded project, but because some projects are coming into conclusion and others are starting. So the decrease in engineering assets account for $53 million, so it's going from 73 to 20. Second item of note is parliamentary precinct rehabilitation. The work is changing by about $51 million less. Again, this is not a decrease in funding because of budget reduction, but just cash flow because the projects, some start, some are ending. Lastly, the item important for note is there are additional reductions of $49 million. So the real property portfolio is going to be saving $124 million by 17-18, up from the existing $74 million that we have in current estimates. So this, in summary, explains the reduction of $210 million.
Can I ask about the department's overall philosophy with respect to the leasing of space across the country? Obviously, I'm assuming that there's kind of a checklist of what you're looking for. It's not always based on, although obviously we want value for money when we're leasing any space across the country for different government services that are provided. I want to give an example of the Service Canada location that services most of the Mississauga area where I'm from. One of the issues that the citizens are upset about is that the property is leased from a private owner, which is fine. It's in a great location, very central, but there's paid parking on site. And that really frustrates the residents that are coming to file an EI claim, coming for a citizenship ceremony or whatever in this particular location. When we look at leasing property, are we looking at all of those variables, where the building is located, obviously what the rent rate is, but then some of these ancillary issues in the overall decision as to which property we're going to lease for services that are provided, and then I'll leave it at that.
Okay, again, thank you for the question. You asked about the philosophy, and I think the underlying philosophy is to get the best value for money. And that really is the critical aspect in determining whether we own or we lease a property. In terms of the specific details of how we make those decisions and the parking issue, turn it over to Mr. Mongeau.
A very brief answer, please. We're actually over time, but I'm interested to hear the response as well.
So 2 minutes.
Yes, please, a brief response.
As the minister, deputy minister explained, most of the requirements come from various client departments. So the client departments establish their requirements in terms of number of spaces, offices, etc. And based on these requirements, we then send out a request for proposal. If we don't have any space in our own offices in the buildings that belong to us, we send out an RFP and we establish all of the requirements made by the departments, and we also add into that the normal requirements such as accessibility, safety, and security. And these would be buildings that are managed by the private sector. So generally speaking, the client's requirements are integrated into the RFP, and then they're also requirements about the quality of space.
Constituents have to pay for parking. Could you answer that?
Je vous dirais, Monsieur le Président, que
I would say, Mr. Chair, is that the main reason is that the department in charge of this space has simply asked for a certain number of parking spaces based on the contract that we have, and that's where it ends with us.
It's a good lesson that all politics is local, I would think. Mr. Ravignac, then we have 5 minutes, please. Mr. Brahmi, we have exactly 5 minutes, but I do remind committee members we have to end this section of the meeting at 12:45 so that we can deal with the votes, so that we can report the main estimates back to the House, and also a small amount of future business of the committee that will be done in camera. So 5 minutes, please, Mr. Brahmi.
From now. So after your,
yes, I won't
your speech.
Je
vais continue.
I'm going to, Ms. Campbell, I understand that you work in the procurement sector, and there are 3 secretariats. One looks after naval procurement, another secretariat looks after defense material, and a third looks after replacement of the CF-18s, the fighter planes that are in the air and not in the water. Yes, that's what we're talking about. So could you provide an answer to Mr. Burns' question about what is going to be occurring over the next few months, and in particular, will there be a first draft of the RFP before the elections? Thank you very much for the clarification. With respect to the question put forward earlier, no decision's been made, but Canada participates in a process with its partners. And so once a political decision is made, we will be able to go ahead with replacement. To answer your question with respect to the secretariats, things are evolving. There are the shipyards, that look after the ships, but now we have a military procurement strategy that will cover everything. So we're currently building one secretariat that covers all of the others and really establishes governance over each military project to bear in mind Canadian capacity and promote competition. So the specific secretariat that was announced by Minister Nicholson, and here I refer to the procurement or the replacement of CF-18s. At that time, we realized that the F-32 didn't meet our needs. So this secretariat will be reabsorbed into a more comprehensive secretariat. The expertise will remain with each secretariat. The expertise for each specialized secretariat will remain the same. But when it comes to governance, reports, follow-up, this will all be centralized. Right now, is there a short list of aircraft manufacturers? I saw back in 2011 that there was an initial discussion with various manufacturers, including European manufacturers. Has this shortlist been updated since, or will it be updated? Where do we stand? I would say that we're prepared if ever a decision is made. We also have a plan that is available to the public to show how we make this process transparent. One final question about aircraft. Over the past years, we've had 6 aircraft deployed in Kuwait and Iraq, and this mission has been expanded to include Syria. What impact is having on the whole process? It was explained that this was a pool of aircraft that's being used, coming from Bagotville and other places. Is that going to put stress on the replacement process? I think that you're better off putting this question to National Defense.
Ce que je trouve un peu...
What I find somewhat worrisome in your answer is that we have less of an idea now when it comes to replacement and manufacture of fighter planes in this country. Aircraft, which I believe most people around this table know that we need. So in answering my colleague's question, you confirmed that there is no short list anymore, if I understand correctly, that we don't have, there is no contact with aircraft manufacturers, and you're simply waiting to find out whether the decision-making politicians will go ahead. Is that what I understand? Am I correct? I would say that one of our role is procurement. So when a decision is made for a specific requirement, that's when we look at the options, what's the best value for Canadians. I would say that we remain in this international partnership in order to keep these options open and to ensure that Canadians benefit from these international opportunities.
Satisfied with that? As you get reelected in future terms, you'll get used to the frustration of replacing our fighter jet aircraft. We all do. I think we would then thank our witnesses for appearing before us today and answering questions on the main estimates. And I'll ask committee members if they're ready to proceed with voting on the votes that have been referred to our committee. In the interest of time, I'm going to begin right away while our guests are excusing themselves. I should point out that in the main estimates 2015-16, we have voted $10.8 billion have been reviewed through the consideration of the committee out of $88 billion that have been referred to us. That's not exactly living up to the standard we had set for ourselves in doing a more thorough and robust examination of the estimate process. Having said that, I'm going to proceed with the votes. Shall vote 1 on the Canada School of Public Service carry? On division. Shall vote 1 under Canadian... Oh, I'm sorry, was there a nay vote? Oh, on division. Thank you. Shall vote 1 under Canadian Intergovernmental Conference Secretariat carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Canadian Transportation Accident Investigation and Safety Board carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Governor General carry?
On division.
Oh, that one got by. Shall vote 1 under the Office of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Privy Council carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Public Service Commission carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 on the Public Works and Government Services carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 5 under Public Works and Government Services carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under Shared Services carry?
On division.
Shall vote 5 under Shared Services carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Senate carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 1 under the Treasury Board
on
Secretariat
a big division on that
carry?
one, yes. On division.
I note there was a big division under
on
vote
the
1
Senate,
under the Senate.
particularly on the Senate.
Duly noted. Shall vote 5 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
Shall vote 10 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 20 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 25 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
Division. Shall vote 30 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
On division. Shall vote 33 under the Treasury Board Secretariat carry?
On division.
And shall the Chair report the main estimates 2015-2016 to the House?
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you very much for your patience, committee members. I'm going to suspend the meeting briefly while we go in camera to discuss future business. No longer than 5 minutes, I promise. Meeting is suspended.